Okay, folks, we are live here. This is the Soft Ed team of experts, and you get to hear the Christmas music behind me, and that's pretty fun because it is the holiday season. We are going live at the top of the hour, 12 noon Eastern time. We're talking about what's happening lately with AI. We have Laura Hill, who's the marketing director of Soft Ed, and she deals with AI every day in the video production, the image production, content production, video editing. So she's got a lot of great things to share about what's going on in that area. Then we have our two gurus. So we have our guru number one, Mr. Balser. Mr. Balser has been heavily involved in testing and technology for years and years and years. Now he's got his hands dabbling how to use AI for business analysis and playing with a lot of different tools. And then Mr. Chris Knotts. Chris is kind of a futurist as well as a really strong product management gentleman with a really good understanding of both business and tech. And he's going to be doing our project management for AI class, but he just has a lot of information about trends. He talks to a lot of customers about their business needs. So we're going to jump in here and really make things happen. So how do you want to start, and who wants to start? Who wants to kick this bad boy off?
Well, what we're seeing in the news right now is you're starting to see a lot of people talking about the 1-year anniversary of ChatGPT. Now, it really hasn't been 1 year since it was created, but it was sort of 1 year since all the news really hit the press and people started going, oh, wow, let's play with this. What is this thing? So how did you first,
hey, has it actually been a year? What's the exact? Is it the exact year? Mr. Knotts, it's the exact year.
This past week, they're calling it an exact year. So,
and how many users do they have? How many users do they have? Any guess?
Well, I don't know what they have now, but I think the big point related to that is that ChatGPT was, to much fanfare, was the first technology ever to reach a 1 million user adoption rate, faster than any other paradigm shifting technology. So that's a pretty big data point.
That's a huge data point. Absolutely. So all three of you use it, right?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Which version?
I pay for 4.
Mark?
Same here.
We'll pay for 4. Okay, Laura, what's the number one reason why you pay for 4 right now? Let's talk about the update. We got this ChatGPT. You're paying for it. It's $20 a month. That's 400 plus bucks. I can't do math very well, but for 10 months, it's $400. I mean, that's a lot of money. What are you doing? Why are you paying for it?
Well, when I first tried it, and I'm thinking it was probably beginning of January, I immediately noticed that it was miles away from the other options. So the way that it formats and structures the responses, just the quality, and I'm not talking about accuracy, I'm just talking from a marketer's perspective in terms of how it formats, how it gives relevant responses. And now, it's only been a few weeks, I think, that they've integrated DALL-E and the ability to upload documents, which some people had on a beta feature, but now it's part of the paid functionality where you can upload documents and you can upload spreadsheets and you can even ask it to do things coding wise. You can ask it to create a PowerPoint file and it'll give you back a PPT file. It uses Python code and other, different code libraries.
Okay. Chris, why are you paying?
The same experience.
Laura, you're paying out of pocket. You're paying out of pocket, right?
Yep.
All right, Chris, why you're paying out of pocket too, Mr. Knotts? Why are you paying for it?
Yes, sir, I am. I think because it's an easy $20 value per month, and I think I first paid just to try to experiment and tinker with it, see if I could learn what's better. I had heard, and I'd have to confirm this, but the rumor I heard was that the initial 3.5 version of ChatGPT passed the bar exam with like a pretty horrible grade, 30% or something like that, and then when they came out with 4. That version passed the bar with like 90-some%. So pretty amazing just in terms of benchmarking results based on the bar passage. But the real reason that then I retained my subscription was just because one day I logged in to do some work with ChatGPT and I didn't realize that I had accidentally had the 3.5 slider on. And I immediately encountered sort of like a weird factor. I was like, what? This doesn't seem like it's doing as well as I thought. And it just, it couldn't it had a hard time following instructions. Just the general quality of the output wasn't nearly as good. And so then when I switched it over back to my Plus subscription, it was just immediately obvious. So a few key things about it for me is I find that 4.0, it retains running context a lot better. And that's like probably one of the most important things that you need when you're using ChatGPT is this ability to do what I like to call it dimension stacking. So, you establish a layer of context and then you move on and you establish a second layer of context. And with 4.0, you can stack these cross-cutting dimensions in a way so that, by the time you're 3 or 4 layers of context deep, you've got a super precise and powerful backdrop for whatever the work is you want to do. And 3.5 just can't do that. So the difference really, once you've used them both, it's like night and day.
And Mark, you're paying through your business, although your business is a small business. So what keeps you on 4.0?
The fact that there are no limits, or I should say for 3.5, it took away the limits. That was a big problem in the early days of using it. Was, you would just run out of, number of prompts you could put in. And then secondly, the fact that the sooner that you get into the early programs, I know I sound like a commercial for them, but the sooner you get into the early programs, the sooner you then get access to the new features, like being able to use, DALL-E integration, and so forth.
And DALL-E is owned by OpenAI, so basically it was an easy play for them to roll that image tool in there, for sure. But I got a question on this one. So this is my biggest problem. The slider always defaults to 3.5, even though I pay for it. What's up with that?
Just remember to switch the slider.
Yeah, but I don't get that. What is that a game for them because they don't want as many people accessing 4? I mean, why is it default even though I'm paying? Any thoughts on that?
That doesn't happen to me, David. I'm not sure.
It happens to me all the time. I'm working in 3.5.
I switch it to 4 a lot. And another thing with 4 is that you can do the internet real-time searching. So I think a lot of people don't realize if you just have the free version that you're not getting the latest internet searching capabilities now that they've partnered with Bing for that feature.
Yeah. Like Laura, I haven't noticed that, David, but then again, the caveat is I use ChatGPT so much that I just always have a session window open. So it may just be that I've never.
Yeah, you're staying on. You're staying on 4. When I pop it open, it always seems to be at 3.5, and I'm like, what the heck is going on?
But I mean, 3.5 is way less resource intensive. So if I was OpenAI, I would always default to that, because you're burning like 10% of the compute power.
But man, that's not nice. But here, this is actually interesting. So we're going to be doing this weekly briefing. OpenAI is, the one that's out there right now as it relates to some crazy shit going on. Excuse me, crazy stuff going on. I should have said that. But anyways, long story short is, what's happening? What's going on with that company? What is going to transpire?
Well, you can't talk about the 1-year anniversary without the astonishing coincidence of all this OpenAI board hoopla.
Hoopla!
Hoopla if I ever saw it, right? So, it's like a soap opera playing out on the world stage. I was thinking to myself, man, Sam Altman must really be the man if getting fired is world news. They reported that on the BBC in the middle of the night, so wow. But I think, for me, there's a few takeaways, right? And really the main one is the direction is being pointed as to whether this powerful generative technology from OpenAI is going to be handled like the original nonprofit charter, good of humanity, let's make sure general AI doesn't kill us all, blah, 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 versus like, hey, we got a cash cow on our hands. We need to handle this more like a Silicon Valley startup. And I think, the general consensus in the AI community seems to be that the direction has been established is, we're going to make money and handle this like a Silicon Valley startup, and we're going to monetize this service. So, the board with its original nonprofit charter, pretty toothless, small board, maybe a little undereducated, but clearly Sam Altman has won the day here, and they're going to make a lot of money off of their models.
Well, it's kind of proven over the last year, really. And I think the big takeaway for me from all of that is that it's proven that there's commercial potential in this. And that, yes, there's still a lot of research. There's a lot of basic research that still needs to be done. There's probably a lot of proprietary stuff that goes on under the hood. What's Q-Star? Okay. I mean, if you want a good list of, if you want to go, see who's talking about generative AI today, whether it's on YouTube or on blogs or whatever, just type in Q-Star. All right. And find all of the people and all of the, what is it? What is it? We keep hearing about it. Okay. So there's a value in the basic research. Okay. And, not only that, there's also a lot of other firms, a lot of open source. They're also looking at the same problems. It's brought a lot of attention to it. It's brought a lot of eyeballs to it. At the same time, it would be silly to not say there's commercial potential sitting.
I think and Laura, I want to get your feedback on this next, but what I want to make sure people realize, and I've seen this in training my entire career, the little community that chugs, right? They talk about all this stuff, and it's a small window. It's really what we need to do is start talking to the second level, the third level, the fourth level. It's like, what are the 6 degrees of Sam Altman? I mean, this is going to start touching large universe sizes of people who still don't even know what the heck it is, except for they heard of OpenAI. So, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's so much speculation, and Sam Altman called the Q-Star leak an unfortunate leak. And I think what's interesting is that we still don't really know why he was fired. Like, that information has not been shared. He did say, as he's now back on as CEO, that he's open to and encouraging of the third-party investigation to look through the miscommunication, whatever that was. We don't know. Lots of speculation. It was, leaked. They had this Q-Star project. I think for me, the takeaway is they have a significant update to bring to market, whether that's GPT-5, whether that's Q-Star, whether that's something else that they're going to be releasing. They're working on something that is far and away better, exponentially better, we don't know, than what we have now with GPT-4. And my big thing is a lot of us, meaning people, leaders at organizations, aren't really fully up to speed with the current capacity that GPT-4 and like AIs bring to our organizations. We haven't even caught up with what we have now. And here they are about to potentially release something in 2024 that is going to be far and away more impactful. So I think the big takeaway is get up to speed with your organizations, figure out what your policies are, figure out how, we can leverage what we have now so that we can start thinking, okay, what's coming down the pike and how are we going to adapt to that?
Well, so I got to take a couple of steps back on you because I'm kind of I'm a little slow in the brain. So Altman is back as president of OpenAI.
Yes.
Is he a Microsoft employee too? Did Microsoft just take it all over?
No, so there is a new board seat for
Yeah.
Microsoft. Microsoft has I don't know what they call it, a non-voting board seat at the table, which is good because their board was very small initially. I think there was four or so on the board, but now they're expanding and trying to get a more diverse board. But Sam Altman is back as CEO, and Microsoft has.
Did he get a raise?
I don't think he needs one.
So let me ask this question. I was saying, so when I think about Facebook, and I think about the impact that Facebook has had on really the millennial generation and some of the problems we have with the millennial generation in the workforce, and a little bit on the Generation Z, although they've moved on from Facebook for sure. Why should I care about Sam Altman? Why should I even should I know about this person? Is what he's thinking about going to dictate how I work in 5 years? And is there anything I could do about that? So, Chris, I'll start with you. As you think big thoughts. So,
sure.
Why should I care?
Yeah, I think you should care because it's going to be paradigm shifting technology. So I think the user adoption rate that we touched on is one of the biggest indicators of that. You can tell a lot about disruption just from the speed with which you achieve these user benchmarks. The other reason I think you should care now, when you talk about the generational difference, that's a super interesting question, David. Will they care, specifically thinking about Sam Altman or OpenAI's models? I'm not sure they will, but if you're talking about 5 years, it is absolutely going to change their their working world. And we mentioned, I think we should just touch on the Q star thing for just 1 second.
Yeah, I was going to throw that out there next. Okay, what the hell is Q star?
Yeah, so
excuse
like,
my language again, but I kind of know what it is. But the same token, I want to hear what you guys tell us.
Yeah, I mean, so we actually don't know a lot about this, but I can tell you what everybody kind of sort of seems to think. It's a little bit speculative, but I think you can extract the so what good enough at this point. So if you think about OpenAI or all the generative AI gold rush that we're seeing there, it's all built around LLMs, right? These large language models, So they figured out how to create these amazing generative results, and they're all based on these massive training data sets, which are all around language. Usually English language, but it's all words and semantics and things like that. So it's amazing what you can do with that. And you can even do, as Mark was saying, you can generate software testing code. You can do all kinds of cool engineering type things using sort of like engineering type frameworks there. But it's all built around language. And so we've been able to see all these generative AI aspects around language. But anybody who's played with these models knows that they're really bad at math, right? So even just rudimentary math is no good. So QStar is basically was like an equivalent project at OpenAI to generate the same type of processing and generative results from a mathematical basis as with the language model. So why is that so disruptive? It's disruptive because if you think about all of the stuff that the language models have unlocked, if you think about the domains of work, science, engineering, and all of these use cases, if you take and imagine you have equivalent power that the language models unlock, but you have also that level of machine expertise with mathematics, all of a sudden it's a very different and almost a very scary world. And so the Sam Altman hoopla, we think, was triggered by a letter to the OpenAI board related to this, and they're like, hey, this Q-star thing is going to change the game. It could be really scary. This really could be a substantive step towards, either dangerous use of AI or maybe even AGI or something like that. But that was a Q-star thing. Think generative AI, but with the same level of mathematical expertise as it now has with language models.
Mark,
well, and the reason why people should care about, the example that's often used to talk about Q-star or what it might be or what that next step could be is that step from, okay, right now when I use GPT-3, 5, or GPT-4, it's basically taking a large body of knowledge, organizing that into various patterns and being able to effectively take its existing content or new content you give it and regurgitate it in patterns it knows, but it doesn't develop new patterns. Okay. The next step is to be able to do that, sort of transitive work of creating new patterns. Mm-hmm. And that's something that for what we do in the business analysis and testing and so forth worlds, that's going to be even more game changing because of the fact that, right now we're seeing, this was just in the news yesterday here in the Bay Area, that a lot more tech companies are laying off more people. And one reporter, even commented that what he's hearing from the CEOs and the C-level people in these companies is that they're finding that a lot of the work that people were doing can be done a lot more effectively, efficiently, more quickly using AI. All right. Now, if we think about all the kinds of documents that people create, or all the kinds of, I've got this information here, I've got to put it into this other form over here, mm-hmm. That they do manually. Okay. That train has left the station. All right. That stuff, our AI for business analysis course, you're going to do that in the first day. Sorry, I'm just selling here.
Yeah.
And that itself is kind of interesting because of the fact that it says, hey, these things that used to take hours, days to create, we can now do much more quickly. Now, the next step is, do we even need to do those things, or can we leapfrog into, much more knowledge-based, value. I
That's
think the
interesting.
answer,
But Laura, go back. You got a lot of social conscious, and so my question about Sam Altman too is: here's someone who's going to dictate potentially the changeover of hundreds of thousands of jobs and careers. I mean, and we have no say. I mean, you can vote in Trump or Biden, you can vote in your mayor, but this person, this one human being, has the potential to disrupt, let's even be honest, millions of jobs. What's your thoughts on that? Why should I be caring? What should we be thinking about?
Well, I think we, meaning all generations, not just
we.
you're asking initially, about certain generations paying
Mm-hmm.
attention. Anyone in the workforce who's a knowledge worker of any sort should be paying attention, because even if you're not thinking that you want to use this or you could benefit, others who are doing your job are already using it. And I think what we're seeing in a lot of the surveys is that even if a company's policy is not yet in place or is not yet allowing it, people are still using these tools and not reporting it, and they're passing it off as their own work, and it's causing them to be more efficient and maybe even have a better quality of output. So your value as a knowledge worker is in this marketplace of other people who are already leveraging these tools, whether they're admitting it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to be aware of that at minimum, that's going on, and that you might not be able to compete with the speed or the quality unless you're able to understand how these tools work. I know that we have this issue where we can't really detect AI generated content, whether that's an image, whether that's text.
That's going to be a big issue. Yeah.
And even in my own behavior online, I noticed that I'm more likely a lot of times to go to something like Perplexity to ask a question versus Google, because I like that narrative response that it gives me back.
Well, I'm all worried about marketing, the disruption of marketing. I mean, where are you going to market if you can't market on paid search, because people are going to leave it? But
exactly. Instead of going to Google and having to sift through the sponsored ads, having to, you already have to sort through a number of things that aren't what you want.
Just from
check all the first 10 spots on Google, versus getting a nicely organized narrative. And with Perplexity, you get the sources, and I find really good source accuracy when I go and check each one and say, hey, this is legit. This is good. Now, caveat being that it's not always the case, and you always have to have that human critical thinking cap on whenever you are interacting with these tools. There are still hallucinations with all of them, but yeah, I would definitely check out Perplexity if you haven't already, and add that to your toolkit.
I just still stuck on him. I don't mean to do this, but I'm stuck on the Sam Altman thing.
David, I'm going to say something. I'm going to disagree. I think focusing on Sam Altman as a person, or focusing on Elon Musk, or focusing on Bill Gates, that's the way the media.
I don't even care about Bill Gates or Elon Musk, because at the end of the day, they didn't have as much control as this one person potentially has.
But there are many people that make up the organization. And as Lara pointed out, there are other equivalent, or sometimes better, GPT tools out there, or GPT agents like Perplexity, like Claude. These are by other companies. Now, Sam Altman might grab the headlines this week, this month. These other companies are going to
then what's their responsibility? Like, I'm a pure capitalist. I've been forever. But when I look at, and Chris, I think, get your thoughts on this. I look at the disruptive possibility here. You got two pathways. You have a pathway of a 3-day work week, because our productivity goes through the roof. So our standard of living is going to increase such that our productivity is going to increase such that you're going to be able to pay someone $100,000 to only work 3 days. Or are we going to go to a situation where there are fewer and fewer jobs, and you have a dystopian situation? Because it could happen in a period of time.
It absolutely could happen. I mean, I think I've got a pretty clear opinion on this, which is that basically both are going to happen simultaneously. And I think the thing that will determine how everything shakes out in the wash is what is the ratio of that productivity enhancing technology that's going to have potentially tremendous economic dividends, while at the same time disrupting people's whose jobs just can't be replaced. So I mean, the AI is going to, and it already is. It creates new jobs. It adds a layer of productivity onto existing jobs, but then there's also a slice of jobs just getting automated away. I mean, if you're
I think that size is going to be much bigger than the jobs it creates.
I think maybe it'll be bigger. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it'll be bigger or not, but I don't think it really even necessarily matters whether it's numerically bigger. I think it's whether it's big enough to create a center of gravity around disgruntled. I mean, we're already seeing this before AI, just with the globalization and existing technologies. But, is it enough of a population of people to where you've got millions of people who are out of a job and don't have a means to work? I mean, it could even be a very small minority. But if it's millions of people, then we're
already seeing this problem in our cities, that being the disruption factor of the technologies that occurred in COVID with regard to, cities populated by folks who can't afford living, and I don't mean to go down this pathway, but when you're talking about AI briefing, there's always going to be this conversation. And I'm bringing the negative up just to kind of stir the pot a little bit because it's kind of interesting. But I think it's something that, I'm concerned that the number of jobs will not be able to pace anywhere near the number of jobs that are disrupted.
But we have been here before. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
We have been here before. If you go back into almost any large enterprise in the 1950s, early 1960s, you would have you'd see desks full of clerical staff.
Typewriters.
Jobs were not just to type, but with adding machines, with calculators, with all kinds of electromechanical devices. And what did they do all day? They added up sums of numbers. No, who does that anymore? You have a spreadsheet. Okay, you have computer databases. You have all of these things that have replaced that. Now, I think we're going to see the same thing. We're going to be able to look at some of the work and we're going to say, does this work add value? Okay. Is there value in the human work? Is there value in the mechanical creating of this document? Look, we've said this for many years, just pre-AI in business analysis. Are you, adding value as a business analyst? Or are you simply go to your corner and write your document because someone says so?
So part of our briefing has to be around your career. So we should talk a little bit about that each time and say, okay, here's some thoughts on your career to prepare yourself and protect yourself. And I don't mean to get so social economic on us, because we also have to talk about practical reality. So let's finish it up on the briefing today. Now we got a couple more minutes. Start with Laura and we'll go around. Anything you want to add around your thoughts around open AI, around the social change, that type of thing?
So, I mean, this is just such a big topic. And I think that anytime we're talking about AI, ethics are going to come up, legal issues are going to come up. There's a lot there. And I think that what I'd like to invite people is to follow some of the leading sources of information on this. And each of us have our own that we bring to the table. But one of the ones that I'd like to recommend is called the Marketing AI Institute. And they have a podcast every week that comes out with Paul Reitzer and Mike Kaput. And they talk about the context of everything that's happening. And even though marketing's in the title, a lot of it is just applicable to the business impact that all of these current events are having. So contextualizing in terms of try to get just like a quick recap of what's happened, let's say in not just the last year, but like the last few years leading up to where we are now, so that you can kind of put everything into a context moving forward. Because I think 2024, we're not going to see any slowing down. If anything, we're going to see this acceleration.
So take
some time and just kind of like get up to speed. And I'm happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn to provide links to any of the resources that we talk about here. David as well, is open to that. I know with LinkedIn connections and Mark and Chris probably as well. But we are going to be having on December 19th an AI day. It's called Generative AI Day for project professionals, and it's just $52. So for half day virtual conference, great price. We've got 9 speakers. And so that's a great way to not just hear the presentations, but to network with other people who are thinking about these things and encountering these challenges in their everyday work life, because I know a lot of people don't have all the time in the world to really get caught up on all this stuff, but they need to know, okay, well, what does this mean for me, my job, and my organization specifically? So that would be my 2 cents to add.
All right, Chris, you're next, man. What do you got? You have a lot of deep thoughts.
Well, I know we're at time, but I think just to tie off,
we can go over a little bit. Go over.
Oh,
it.
okay. So I guess the takeaway from today's topic would be, whether you're coming at it from the direction of Sam Altman or whatever, I think we're seeing a rapidly forming direction around the regulatory environment, the compliance environment. We work in the enterprise customer space. Our customers care about these things, whether they're Fortune companies or government agencies. So the decisions are being made right now, I think, which are going to shape those. Altman and OpenAI and the big incumbents, they want to see a regulatory environment which favors incumbents. So limits on entries into the marketplace and things like that. I think that's a very important thing to watch, because we're going to have a much more democratized set of tools if they don't get that type of regulation.
Wouldn't the democratization keep us safer in some ways?
I think it would. Yeah, I think it would, because otherwise I think you see, and David, you and I have talked about this in the past, but otherwise the alternative is you're going to see sort of this tech oligarchy start to form. I mean, even more to the extent that it already is, but that, preventing 99.9% of the world's population from accessing the best and most powerful tokenization technologies or whatever, that to me is a big problem. I
like that point. We got to dig into that more. That's really
it definitely merits its own discussion, right? And then finally, to answer Laura's question, I actually don't listen to a whole lot of dedicated AI podcasts, but I listen to ones that get into it quite frequently. So my favorites, David, hopefully you'll love this, but one of my favorite sources of information is The Economist. I always like to. The Economist keeps a really close eye on these trends and movements. I also like to keep my eye on Ezra Klein. He doesn't do specifically AI content, but every so often he'll come around. He does great roundups of the overall generative AI ecosystem. I also like Sam Harris and the Making Sense podcast, which about every 5th or 10th episode he'll do one on AI. And then maybe we should put together a list of recommended reading, because there's a lot of books I'd love to talk about.
All right, Mark, you can finish this off in a minute and a half. What are your final thoughts on the first of our many weekly briefings once a week?
Don't get overwhelmed and think that you're so behind that you can't get started in it. This is one of those things where you are not late. You are in the early days. Get in, jump in, do the little things. It's kind of like the old joke. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? How do you get to generative AI? Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, and I know you did that path. I mean, the stuff that you did to start out building a class, you just played, you beat on it. You played, you practiced, you beat on it. Well, this has been great. I mean, it's a great first start. We focus on OpenAI since it's their 1-year anniversary. We talked about a little bit of technology, so you hear why you might want to spend $20 a month on 4.0. All 3 experts really gave you good points on that. We got some concerns about economic factors, but the idea of democratization is so critically important. I think we have to be open to letting people do, and that do will ultimately regulate itself instead of one person trying to do it. That's my concern. I don't trust one person who has that much control and deciding what tools go out and why. And then Laura, great stuff associated with pitching the knowledge, getting after certain podcasts, and we got that great conference coming up. So with that, we'll all bid you adieu until next Tuesday. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya.